Hello and welcome back to F1 Every Week. I am your host Ben Weatherall, and today I'm going to be covering all of the key news points from Formula 1 this week, including a certain Mr. Michael Masi walking away from the FIA and a breakdown of the most recent news from McLaren to do with their 2023 F1 seats. You can listen to the podcast on the streaming platform of your choice, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all linked below. Now, without further ado, let's get into episode 65. Starting off with the big news that hit motorsport this week, that Michael Masi has left the FIA. The Australian was appointed as Formula 1 race director following the death of the infamous Charlie Whiting prior to the start of the 2019 season, but, as we are all aware, was fired in February of this year after his legal acrobatics at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix of last year, which handed Max Verstappen a very controversial championship victory. We certainly won't be forgetting that one anytime soon. But despite his major mismanagement of the season finale, he was, to the horror of all Lewis fans, offered a different position within the FIA. However, on Tuesday, it was announced that Michael would be leaving, the FIA thanking him for his support in a statement. Despite this very copy-paste statement from the FIA, it reeked of the undertone of the human error Masi had made 7 months ago, which could have tarnished F1's reputation forever. Masi himself spoke up the following day, describing his time with the governing board as a pleasure and an honour, and being careful not to mention the incident which led to his predicament. I personally think that this is definitely the best decision that Masi could have made. Even though he's no longer the race director of F1, his reputation within the FIA will have been entirely wiped out by the excruciatingly high-profile blunder, and to stay with the organisation with which he ruined the most mouth-watering finale of all time would only spell a wide variety of trouble for his future in the sport. I'm sure that Masi can discover a career in another area of motorsport, possibly in his native Australia where he is relocating, but it is clear that his days in Formula 1 are over. If you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, feel free to comment down below if you think Masi should have left the FIA and what he should do next. Next up is news from yet another disgraced former FIA official. This time, it's Bernie Ecclestone. Ecclestone is a man of many, many controversies. Be that tax evasion in 2008, comments in support of Hitler in 2009, bribery accusations in 2013, and more. However, in the years after his sacking from the FIA in 2017, as Liberty Media took over the sport, these incidents have only multiplied. In 2020, following the shocking murder of George Floyd, Bernie claimed that black people are more racist than white people, and came out in support of Vladimir Putin following the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, as well as describing the deaths of Ukrainian officials at the hands of Russian soldiers and missiles as not intentional. Thinking back to the Nelson Piquet incident of a few weeks ago, which I covered extensively in my breakdown of the British Grand Prix, these actions from Ecclestone are precisely the reason why racism and other bigoted ideologies are still maintaining their stranglehold on the sport. As I said 2 weeks ago, no one should be giving people such as Bernie Ecclestone the platform with which to share his views. It is only inspiring yet more to promote his outdated concepts. But this week, Bernie's reputation plunged even further into the depths, as he was accused of fraud, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs officers discovering that Mr. Ecclestone had been hiding £400 million worth of undeclared assets overseas. This is just the next in a very long line of controversial incidents surrounding Bernie, as I have talked about, but epitomises the greed which permeates F1 to this day. Thank God he is no longer running the show, because F1 would be an entirely different sport if he was still in charge. Finally this week, I wanted to break down this week's drama over the McLaren 2023 second seat. Let's rewind. Daniel Ricciardo signed for McLaren for the 2021 season after a barnstorming effort the previous year, which saw the Australian driver take 2 podiums and 5th in the Drivers' Championship, Renault's first top 5 in the Drivers' Championship since 2008 with Fernando Alonso. And everyone assumed that Daniel would fit in with this team on the rise perfectly. However, it was evident from the start that this would not be the case, as despite regular points finishes, the spark that Daniel had in the previous year was nowhere to be found, despite his astonishing win in Italy. And not only was he underperforming in very, very positive machinery, only finishing 8th in the Drivers' Championship, but he was also being destroyed by his teammate, who took 4 podiums to Daniel's 1. And this number should arguably have been 5 had it not been for Lando's dicey strategy decision in Russia. 10 top 5s to Daniel's 6, 160 points to Daniel's 115. But we can in some ways forgive Daniel for this poor season, as he always struggles to get to grips with new cars and new teams. So surely 2022 would see some improvement. Well, it is safe to say that there was no improvement to be found, and Daniel's position is looking more and more stark by every race weekend, with the gap in form between himself and Lando continuing to widen. While Lando has only missed out on the points 3 times, Daniel has only scored 3 times. While Lando has a respectable 64 points to his name, in 7th in the Drivers' Championship, Daniel is languishing in 12th, with only 17 points. Some may blame the poor McLaren machinery for this further dip in form from Ricciardo, with the 14-15 finish in Bahrain proving that McLaren have taken a big step back from last year. But just look at Lando. He's managed 4 top 6 finishes, one of which having been a podium at round 4 in Imola, while Daniel is always on the fringes of the points, having finished in the 11th to 14th range 6 times out of 11 this season. And it is not as if he has not been given the opportunity to pick up some easy points, as reliability has been an issue for a multitude of teams this season. While McLaren have only picked up 2 combined DNFs all season. While Daniel becomes more and more volatile, Lando just becomes more versatile. But Daniel's chances for 2023 seem to take another blow this week, as it was confirmed that 2021 IndyCar champion Alex Palou would sign with the McLaren team for 2023, engaging in tests on last year's McLaren MCL35M alongside IndyCar star Colton Herta, who is set to complete a 2-day test next week in Portimao. The influx of IndyCar drivers to the McLaren team sparked rumours that Daniel's already precarious position was in jeopardy. But in a punchy statement on Wednesday, Daniel reinvigorated the hope in his fans that the Honey Badger was here to stay, commenting that he is committed to McLaren to the end of the season and is not walking away from the sport. This is certainly positive news, as there has to have been a reason why he would put the statement out now, possibly a definitive confirmation from the team that Daniel would be on for 2023, but just look back a few years ago, when Sergio Perez's contract was terminated at what was formerly known as Racing Point, despite the fact that he had the season of his life with his first victory in the sport and 4th in the Drivers' Championship. And this is definitely not the case for Daniel, So I think that the sad truth is that he is now counting down his days in McLaren, and maybe even Formula One. Thank you for listening to F1 Every Week, and tune in next week for a review of the 2022 French Grand Prix.